You'd think that after fighting so many wars, a country would go broke. But Russia, it just keeps rolling. Chechnya, Georgia, Crimea, Syria, Ukraine, sanctions from all directions, frozen assets, isolation from the West, and yet Russia is still rich, still powerful, still flexing on the world stage. So how exactly is that possible? Because here's the twist, it's not just about size. Russia's vast landmass is impressive, sure, but wealth doesn't just come from having more land or people. If that were the case, countries like Canada or Brazil would dominate the global economy. What's really going on behind the scenes is far more strategic and in some ways a bit terrifying. In this video, I'll take you deep inside how Russia is keeping its economy alive and kicking despite war, chaos, and pressure from nearly every global superpower. From energy deals that silently pump billions to secretive financial networks to a playbook that turns sanctions into fuel for survival. This is the story of how Russia is not just surviving, it's thriving in ways the world doesn't always see. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll realize why it's not the size that makes Russia rich. It's something much smarter. When you look at Russia's recent history, one thing becomes painfully obvious. It has been constantly at war. Not just one or two battles here and there, but major conflicts that would cripple the economy of most countries. It started in the 1990s with the brutal wars in Chechnya, where Russia fought to keep control over a breakaway region. The destruction was massive, the human cost even worse. The economy at the time was already weak, reeling from the collapse of the Soviet Union, but somehow Russia held on. Then came Georgia in 2008. In just 5 days, Russian forces steamrolled into South Ossetia and Abkhazia. The international community condemned it, but once again, Russia walked away with strength, not weaker. Economically, it didn't collapse. In fact, it barely flinched. Fast forward to 2014, the annexation of Crimea. This time, the response was much louder. Sanctions came pouring in from the West. Russia was kicked out of the G8. Billions of dollars in assets were frozen, trade ties were severed. Many analysts predicted that the Russian economy would go into a free fall. But it didn't. Instead of collapsing, Russia found ways to adapt. We'll get into the how in a moment, but let's not forget what came next. Syria, Russia jumped into the Middle Eastern battlefield in 2015, backing Bashar al-Assad's regime. It was expansive, complex, and full of geopolitical risk, but the rewards, access, influence, and arms deals. Again, Russia wasn't bleeding money, it was buying leverage. And then came the biggest one yet. Ukraine 2022, full-scale invasion. The entire global economy felt the shockwaves. The West threw every possible economic weapon at Russia. Swift banking bans, more sanctions, frozen central bank reserves, shutting down airspace, and targeting. The Russian ruble plummeted. Companies like McDonald's, Apple, and BP pulled out of the country. Everyone expected economic disaster. But here's where things got strange. Russia didn't just survive, it stabilized. In some areas, it even started to grow again. By all logic, Russia should have collapsed. A country that's fighting multiple wars, facing record-breaking sanctions, and isolated from the Western financial system shouldn't still have a functioning economy, let alone a rich one. So what's the secret? Why is Russia still standing when others would have crumbled? Well, the truth is, Russia learned how to weaponize its economy long ago. It's been building defenses, not just military, but financial. It planned for the worst-case scenario, and now it's playing a long game most countries never prepared for. In the next section, I'll break down the real engine behind Russia's survival, its massive natural resources, and how it's turning oil, gas, and even coal into a geopolitical superpower move. Let's dive into that next. Alright, so how is Russia still afloat, let alone rich, after all the wars and sanctions? The answer in one word, resources. Russia isn't just big in size, it's sitting on one of the most resource-rich lands on the planet. We are talking oil, natural gas, coal, uranium, gold, diamonds, timber, you name it. And this stuff isn't just lying there for show. Russia has spent decades building a system that turns these natural assets into serious money, even during wartime. Let's start with the big one, oil and gas. Russia is the world's third largest oil producer and second only to the US in natural gas. For years, this energy empire was feeding straight into the heart of Europe. Countries like Germany, Italy, and France were heavily dependent on Russian gas. We are talking billions of dollars every year flowing into the Russian economy, almost like passive income on a national level. These weren't just ordinary exports. Russia built a pipeline network so deep and strategic, it became a weapon of its own. Take Nord Stream, for example, a pipeline under the Baltic Sea that directly connected Russia to Germany. For years, it supplied around 40% of Europe's natural gas. That's not just trade, that's leverage. Even when tensions rose, Europe kept buying. They had no choice. Heating homes, running factories, keeping the lights on, it all depended on Russian gas. It was only after the invasion of Ukraine that Europe finally scrambled to reduce that dependency. But by then, Russia had already shifted gears. Enter China. With Europe backing away, Russia pivoted eastward fast. It ramped up deals with China and India, selling them discounted oil and gas and opening new energy corridors. The most important one, the Power of Siberia, a massive gas pipeline stretching from Russia into China capable of supplying over 38 billion cubic meters of gas annually. That's not just economic survival, that's geopolitical backup. And it's not just oil and gas. Russia is one of the world's largest coal exporters, and it supplies key minerals like nickel, palladium, and aluminium, all essential for everything from electronics to electric vehicles. Even in the middle of a war, countries around the world are still importing these resources from Russia, either directly or through backdoor trade routes. Here's the kicker. Even under sanctions, energy exports remain largely untouched. Why? Because cutting off Russian oil or gas means hurting global energy markets. That's why countries like China, India, and even some in the Middle East have continued buying, sometimes even more than before. In short, Russia's economy is powered by the ground beneath its feet. These aren't just resources, they're economic lifelines. And thanks to decades of building the right infrastructure, pipelines, ports, and deals, Russia has turned its natural wealth into a war-proof income stream. But that's only half the story, because even with all this money flowing in, how did Russia manage to protect its economy from sanctions and financial attacks? In the next section, we'll look at how Russia's long-term strategy helped it turn economic punishment into preparation. Now, if there is one thing the West has used as its main weapon against Russia, it's sanctions. Banks frozen, billionaires targeted, technology blocked, entire sectors cut off. And it started long before the Ukraine war. Back in 2014, when Russia annexed Crimea, the first wave of serious sanctions hit. Most people thought this was the beginning of the end for the Russian economy, but Russia didn't collapse. Instead, it began preparing quietly, strategically, and patiently. What happened next is something I call the economic fortress mindset. The Russian government knew more sanctions were coming, so they decided, let's build an economy that doesn't depend on the West. And they started with a major shift in mindset, import substitution. What does that mean? Basically, Russia began producing at home what it used to buy from abroad. From agriculture to tech to machinery, they pushed local industries hard. Before 2014, Russia imported a lot of food. After the sanctions, they became one of the world's top wheat exporters. They replaced Western cheese, meat, and even high-tech goods with domestic or non-Western alternatives. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Next came the ruble. After it crashed in 2014, the Russian central bank stepped in with an aggressive plan. It floated the currency, raised interest rates, and built up massive foreign currency reserves. By 2022, Russia had over $600 billion in foreign reserves, one of the largest war chests in the world. That stockpile acted as a shock absorber when new sanctions hit after the Ukraine invasion. But it didn't stop there. Russia also started moving away from the US dollar and SWIFT banking system. This is where BRICS comes in: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries began exploring alternative financial systems, trading in local currencies, and strengthening economic ties. When the West tried to freeze Russia out of the global financial system, Moscow didn't panic. They just turned eastward. India paid for oil in rupees, China used yuan. Russia had slowly shifted its trade routes and alliances away from the West, and that gave it economic oxygen when it was most needed. And then there is the Russian Central Bank. Behind the scenes, this institution has been a master strategist. They have maintained tight control over inflation, stabilized the ruble again in 2022, and ensured that foreign trade, especially in energy, keeps money flowing in. All of this combined is what I call sanction proofing. It doesn't mean the economy hasn't taken hits, it definitely has, but Russia's ability to absorb those hits without falling apart is what shocks most analysts. While the West expected collapse, Russia built resilience. And we are not done yet, because in the next section I am going to explain how Russia's internal economic system, from state-owned industries to propaganda-driven consumer confidence, is also designed to survive and even thrive under pressure. So far, we have looked at Russia's natural resources and how it shielded itself from sanctions, but here's something that often flies under the radar. Russia's wealth isn't just in oil or gas, it's in how that wealth is controlled. Russia's economic power is deeply tied to its state-owned giants and the network of elites who manage them. Let's start with the titans: Gazprom, Rosneft, and Lukoil. These aren't your average corporations, they are state-controlled cash machines. Gazprom, for example, isn't just a gas company, it's a geopolitical tool. It controls the largest natural gas reserves in the world and supplies dozens of countries, and it's majority owned by the Russian government. Same goes for Rosneft, the oil giant run by Putin ally Igor Sechin. These companies rake in billions of dollars, and a big chunk of that wealth funnels straight into the Kremlin's hands or into the pockets of Russia's ultra-wealthy elite. But here's the thing. This wealth isn't always visible. In fact, Russia has mastered the art of hiding it. We are talking offshore accounts, shadowy shell companies, and gold vaults stashed across the globe. Many of Russia's richest oligarchs, guys like Roman Abramovich, Oleg Deripaska, or Alisher Osmanov, don't just live in Russia. Their money is scattered across London, Dubai, Switzerland, the Caribbean. Even when Western sanctions try to freeze their assets, a lot of it is buried so deep that it's nearly untouchable. But this isn't just about personal yachts or luxury mansions. This hidden wealth plays a strategic role. It forms a parallel economy, a backup system, an informal safety net for Russia's elite and for the regime itself. And let's not forget gold. While many countries hold their reserves in foreign banks, Russia has been quietly stockpiling gold at home. By 2022, it had over 2,300 tons of it, worth more than $140 billion. Gold can be traded, held in secret, or used to stabilize the ruble when needed. It's basically economic insurance that doesn't rely on the dollar or the euro. Now here's what makes it all so powerful: non-transparency. In Western democracies, public scrutiny and financial disclosure are standard. In Russia, not so much. The state, the oligarchs, and major companies all operate behind a veil. This lack of transparency isn't a bug, it's a feature. It gives the Russian government the freedom to shift assets, redirect funds, and keep economic systems running even under extreme external pressure. It's messy, it's murky, but it works. This web of control, part state, part oligarchy, part shadow finance, means that Russia doesn't play by the usual economic rules. It's not about open markets or shareholder returns. It's about survival, influence, and protecting the core, the Kremlin, the elite, and the system they have built. Now let me explain why size doesn't matter. When we think of Russia, one thing often comes to mind: its sheer size. But in truth, Russia's success isn't about the size of its landmass. It's about the strategic advantages that come with it. Geography isn't just about being big. It's about being in the right place at the right time. Let's break it down. Russia's location offers vital access points, from its vast oil pipelines to its control of Arctic trade routes. These are not just random geographical features, they are strategic assets that serve as Russia's economic and geopolitical leverage. Take Russia's pipeline, for instance. These pipelines don't just run through vast tracts of land, they connect Russia to Europe and Asia, giving it control over the energy lifelines of entire regions. Even though Russia has cut off gas supplies to countries like Germany in recent years, it still controls key pipelines that shape Europe's energy landscape. In the face of a European push for energy independence, Russia's existing pipeline infrastructure remains a critical tool for leveraging power both regionally and globally. But it's not just about energy. Russia also controls critical routes in the Arctic where melting ice opens new trade passages to the east. This gives Russia unprecedented control over a growing global shipping lane, placing it in a key position as shipping routes in the Arctic become more important. And let's not forget about military bases in these regions. Russia is quietly positioning itself to dominate the Arctic just as it dominates much of Europe's energy. And this is just the geographical setup. The real power lies in Russia's diplomatic strategy. Russia isn't an isolated power, it's a chameleon. It plays both sides of the game, the East and the West. On one hand, Russia has deep, complex ties with China and India, positioning itself as an ally to the BRICS nations. On the other, it continues its power plays with Europe and the United States, using sanctions and energy deals to maintain influence. Russia's strategic depth lies in its ability to balance these relationships, pivot when necessary, and exploit weaknesses in global systems. When Europe turns its back, Russia's already pivoted eastward. When China and India need energy, Russia is there to offer discounted supply. Now let's talk about Russia's investments in influence. This isn't just about money or land, it's about power projection. That's where things like Wagner, the private military group, and military industrial exports come into play. Russia exports military technology to countries across Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. It's not just about arms sales, it's about creating loyal allies, establishing strategic footholds, and exerting influence in regions that matter most. Whether it's training militias or supplying weapons, Russia is securing its place as a global player. Finally, don't forget energy diplomacy. While Russia may no longer have the same level of influence over Western Europe due to its recent cuts, it remains a dominant player in energy diplomacy with countries like Turkey, China, and India. These energy agreements are part of a broader effort to use energy as leverage, ensuring that nations dependent on Russian supplies have their hands tied when it comes to international policy. Before we wrap up, I just want to take a moment to speak directly to you. I pour my heart and soul into every video I create on this channel, researching, scripting, editing, and putting in the hours because I truly believe in delivering content that matters. Every click, every view, every comment means the world to me, but I need your help to keep this channel growing. If you have found value in what I've shared today, please consider subscribing. It would honestly mean so much to me, not just as a creator, but as someone who's working tirelessly to keep this channel alive and thriving. Your support is what makes this all possible. So if you have been watching and haven't yet subscribed, please take a moment and hit that button. It truly helps more than you know. Thank you so much for being here. To wrap up, Russia's ability to remain financially strong despite facing constant wars, sanctions, and global pressure is nothing short of impressive. It's clear that it's not just about size, it's about how Russia strategically uses its resources, adapts to challenges, and leverages its global influence. Whether through energy dominance, smart economic moves, or geopolitical maneuvering, Russia continues to stand tall. As we have seen, strategy is the true key to its ongoing wealth and power. But here's the thing. When Russia cut off its gas supply to Europe, everything changed. But guess who stepped in? Norway. This small, quiet country suddenly became Europe's energy lifeline, supplying oil and gas when it was needed most. The result, Norway didn't just help save Europe, it became the richest nation on the continent. Click here to see how Norway played its cards right and cashed in big. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into global affairs.